Also tonight, from our I-Team, multiple victims come forward accusing the president of the Diocese Seminary of sexual misconduct. That man, Father Joe Gatto, is currently on administrative leave. As Chief Investigator Charlie Specht explains, some say the seminary that Father Gatto led is where the seeds of the sexual abuse crisis in the diocese were planted.
You go to people in times when you're vulnerable, when you're in times of trouble.
It was 20 years ago when Marty Logan first went to Father Joe Gatto after suffering from bouts of anxiety. The charismatic young priest would help him talk through his problems. But Logan found it odd when Father Gatto invited him to a house in Springville that Gatto owned with another priest. Gatto told him he had just purchased a new telescope.
Do you want to help me put together? It was just odd.
Logan declined the offer but says Gatto made him feel bad about saying no.
I think maybe at that time he's like, hey, do you want to go see a movie? And I was probably feeling bad because I said no to the other thing because he really took it personal.
It was in the movie theater where Logan says the friendship took an unexpected turn.
He leaned over, grabbed, and was in a very provocative way, grabbed my knee. And at that point, I was just totally turned off. It's not something I was looking for. After that, when I rejected him, he would start calling me and I wasn't returning his calls. I cut off communication. At that point, he was leaving voicemails, and it was almost like if you broke up with a girlfriend or whatnot.
Earlier this month, Logan filed an official complaint with the Diocese of Buffalo, which suspended Gatto. The priest told 7 Eyewitness News he was taking a medical leave that had nothing to do with sexual misconduct. Gatto last month told the Buffalo News, "I have never broken my promises as a celibate priest, ever." And the diocese this week released a statement saying Gatto vehemently denies Logan's allegations. Gatto for many years ran the diocese's largest parish, until Bishop Malone, citing his very fine reputation, tapped him 4 years ago for an even higher position, president and rector of Christ the King Seminary. Documents obtained by the I-Team show Gatto and Malone have both been involved in dealing with accused priests. In one 2012 memo that refers to another accused priest, church lawyers discussed whether we should report this matter to the review board. Father Gatto recommended reporting it to give the bishop some cover. In a more personal email, Bishop Malone speaks about the abuse crisis in the diocese, saying, "I do tire of talking about it." Gatto reassures him, saying, "You have been incredibly strong and the lightning rod for the entire situation. You cannot keep up the pace and intensity. Promise you will take time for Richard very soon. I am here for you in any way you deem necessary."
Who do you trust? Who do you trust?
Gene Walczak's experience with Father Gatto almost destroyed his faith. It was the 1980s, and Gatto was filling in at Queen of Heaven Parish in West Seneca, where Walczak would come to church early to pray.
2 Sundays in a row it happened, and then the third Sunday he came up to me and said, "I noticed you're here early." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm having a rough time in my life." And I was like, "Okay, well, I tell you what, let's get together, give me a call, and we'll get together." I'm like, "Great." How can you go wrong as a priest, right? You're looking for help. You're looking for somebody to guide you.
Again, the house in Springville came into play. Gatto had a woodchuck on his property, and Walczak's father owned a gun. Walczak offered to loan him the hunting rifle and said he and Gatto went to a local pizzeria before stopping at Walmart.
And we're walking out of Walmart, and we're walking down the main aisle. All of a sudden, his hand hits my crotch. And I stopped, and I'm like, no, that really didn't happen, So I kept on walking, and his hand hit my crotch again.
Walczak says there was no mistaking Gatto's intentions.
He looked at me, gave me like a smirk,
It was hard for him to process what had just happened, so Walczak drove Gatto back to the priest's house.
So the reason I really went back and went inside was because he was a priest. The priests and the police officers, no matter whatever they say, you do. That's the way I was brought up. That's why my parents were brought up.
Walczak says Gatto started pouring drinks and asked him to stay the night. The diocese confirmed to 7 Eyewitness News that it has received Walczak's allegation, and Gatto did not return our messages seeking comment about this allegation.
I just felt creepy. It was just creepy. It was just, it wasn't, when he asked me to sleep over and stuff like that, I'm like, no, I gotta go. I really have to go.
Gatto at one point took Walczak here to Christ the King Seminary in East Aurora, the official seminary of the Diocese of Buffalo. Some think the seeds of the sexual abuse crisis were planted here, where seminarians and faculty describe a sexual culture that has thrived for decades and continued under Gatto, whom Bishop Malone named as president of the seminary 4 years ago.
When Father Gatto became the rector of Christ the King Seminary, the hypocrisy of that was part of the motivation for me to leave active priestly ministry.
Jim Faluzek is a former priest in Erie, PA, who spends much of his time advocating for victims of sexual abuse. In the mid-90s, Gatto was his formation director at Christ the King Seminary, where men from the Diocese of Erie and the Diocese of Buffalo would study to become priests. Much of the following account is based on sworn testimony Faluzek gave under oath during the recent grand jury investigation of clergy sexual abuse in Pennsylvania.
So he was in an official capacity supervising me and deciding one year to the next whether I would advance to the next year and ultimately get ordained.
Faluzek confided in Gatto that he was gay. So when a fellow seminarian had questions about his own sexuality, Faluzek recommended the seminarian speak with Gatto.
I was horrified when my friend came back to me and says, well, I told him. I said, how did it go? He said, he proceeded to tell me that they had had sex together in Father Gatto's room, in the dormitory, in the chaplain's quarters of the dorm at Christ the King. That somebody who was sexually involved with a student would now be at the pinnacle, who would be overseeing the entire life of the seminary, was a clear signal to me that the church was broken from the inside, just sick.
Faluzek in 2014 took his concerns to Lawrence Persico, Bishop of Erie, PA. Persico told him he would forward the information on to Bishop Malone. After hearing nothing, Faluzek 6 months ago sent a letter to Bishop Malone saying he regarded Malone as a noble man who had a chance to do the right thing and investigate Gatto. In response to this story, the Diocese of Buffalo released a statement saying Malone met with Bishop Persico in Erie shortly after receiving Faluzek's letter, where Bishop Persico told him the priest completely denied that there was anything inappropriate between himself and Father Gatto. The statement said other church officials again looked into the matter this week and concluded this was handled properly. 2 months after Faluzek made the allegations, Malone provided Gatto a prominent place at the ordination of the diocese's 4 new priests. Gatto, accused of preying on seminarians, was allowed to bless them in front of Buffalo's bishop.
Also with us this evening, Father Joe Gatto. He is the president and rector of Christ the King Seminary in East Aurora.
Gatto was also front and center at a Catholic roundtable hosted by 7 Eyewitness News in May, where the diocese was allowed to choose 1 priest to be on the panel and settled on Father Gatto.
We feel the anger, we feel the anguish. We believe that what the bishop is trying to do to bring this forward, to correct it. These men that are preparing now to be prayerful, celibate, obedient priests are doing it in a way that even when I was in the seminary, I never had a chance to do.
Beverly Malona taught at Christ the King Seminary in the 1990s when she worked for the Diocese of Buffalo.
It was a hotbed of sexual activity. I'd walk in and the hair would stand up on my neck.
She recalls seminarians coming to her office in the chancery to tell them how they were being targeted by other priests who were supposed to be helping them, but instead were hitting on them.
Another friend of mine, her son came to me. He said, I don't want to go to Christ the King. I hear there's, a lot of sexual activity.
She says Buffalo's bishop told the man if he wanted to be a priest in Buffalo, he had to attend Christ the King.
He was accosted by a faculty member who tried to touch him. He reported it to the bishop. He was targeted as someone who reported their little secrets. And I can repeat this story over and over and over again.
Now, we should say here, neither of these men are looking for any money from the diocese. They say they just want to get out the truth. There are now, if you're counting, more than 100 priests in the Diocese of Buffalo accused of some form of sexual misconduct, and some of their victims tomorrow plan to hold a press conference to talk about this seminary issue.